Hollywood has a strange way of turning silence into a story. Sometimes, one photograph is enough to send millions of people searching for answers. Sometimes, a glance between two familiar faces can revive a chapter that audiences thought had been closed forever. And when those two faces belong to Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, the speculation becomes almost impossible to ignore. For years, their names have been linked by one of the most recognizable film franchises of the modern era. Their chemistry in the 50 Shades films became a subject of endless discussion. Their interviews were dissected for hidden meaning, and every moment they shared publicly seemed to invite another question. Were they simply brilliant co-stars? Were they unusually close friends? Or was there something about their connection that audiences could never quite explain? Now, rumors of a possible reunion have once again pushed their names into the spotlight. But there is a crucial distinction that often disappears when celebrity stories go viral. Rumors are not confirmation. A blurry photograph is not a relationship announcement. A smile is not a confession. And silence can mean almost anything. That is precisely what makes this story so fascinating. Because the real question is not simply whether Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson have crossed paths again. Of course, two actors who shared one of Hollywood's biggest franchises can encounter one another professionally or socially. The more interesting question is why every possible interaction between them still generates such an extraordinary reaction nearly a decade after the first 50 Shades film changed both of their careers. Their story became bigger than the films themselves. When 50 Shades of Grey arrived in cinemas, Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson were suddenly placed under an enormous microscope. They weren't merely actors promoting a film. They were being asked to embody characters whose relationship had already attracted huge attention through E.L. James's novels. Every interview became an opportunity for journalists to ask about chemistry. Every photograph became potential evidence of friendship. Every laugh was analyzed. Every moment of awkwardness became a headline. And that pressure matters when looking at the rumors surrounding them today. Because people tend to remember celebrity relationships as though they exist outside ordinary reality. They see two famous people standing beside one another and immediately begin constructing a narrative. But the reality of Hollywood is considerably more complicated. Actors can share intense professional chemistry without having a romantic relationship. Former co-stars can remain friends without wanting to restart anything. Two people can care deeply about one another while living completely separate lives. That is why the latest speculation is so intriguing. The internet has always been fascinated by unfinished stories. A story with a clear ending eventually loses its power. But a story containing unanswered questions can survive for years. Jamie and Dakota's professional partnership is one of those stories. Their characters became culturally iconic, their performances were repeatedly discussed, and their names became permanently connected in the public imagination. Even after the franchise ended, audiences continued asking about them. What happened after the camera stopped rolling? Did they remain close? Did their lives simply move in different directions? And perhaps most importantly, could two people who shared such an unusual chapter ever return to the same place emotionally, even if only as friends? Those questions are far more complicated than a viral headline suggests. Jamie Dornan's life after 50 Shades moved in a very different direction from the fantasy audiences associated with Christian Grey. He continued building a career beyond the franchise, taking on projects that allowed him to demonstrate a broader range as an actor. He also remained deeply connected to his family life, something that has always existed alongside the public attention surrounding his career. Dakota Johnson's trajectory was equally distinctive. Rather than remaining defined by Anastasia Steele, she continued exploring dramatically different roles and eventually established herself as a producer and creative figure as well as an actress. Her career choices increasingly demonstrated a desire to move beyond the image created by the franchise. That transformation is important. The Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson audiences remember from the height of 50 Shades are not necessarily the same people they are today. Years change people. Careers change people. Relationships change people. Responsibilities change people. And sometimes distance changes people more than anything else. This is where the reunion narrative becomes emotionally powerful, even without assuming that every rumor is true. Imagine two young actors entering a global phenomenon together. Suddenly, millions of people have an opinion about how they look at one another. Millions have expectations about their personalities. Millions believe they understand their chemistry because they watch them portray fictional characters. Then the films end. The cameras move elsewhere. The interviews stop. The promotional tours disappear. And eventually, the audience has to let go. But audiences rarely let go as quickly as celebrities do. For fans, Christian and Anastasia remain frozen in time. Their story can be replayed whenever someone watches the films again. Their interviews can be clipped and reposted. Old photographs can suddenly become viral years later. A single throwback image can send an entire generation back to the moment when the franchise dominated popular culture. That creates an unusual phenomenon. The audience is emotionally revisiting a relationship that the actors themselves may have moved far beyond. And whenever Jamie and Dakota are seen together, even in completely innocent circumstances, the old story immediately returns. This is why rumors of a reunion can become so powerful without necessarily containing much confirmed information. The internet doesn't need a complete story. It only needs a gap. And then people fill that gap themselves. One supposed sighting becomes another. A photograph becomes a theory. A theory becomes a headline. The headline becomes a social media trend. And suddenly millions of people are discussing a relationship that may not even exist in the form being described. But beneath all the speculation is something much more interesting: the extraordinary durability of their connection in the public imagination. Why them? Why, after all these years, does the possibility of Jamie and Dakota sharing the same room still produce such a reaction? The answer may have less to do with romance than people think. It may be about nostalgia. For many fans, 50 Shades represents a specific period in their lives. Watching Jamie and Dakota together is not simply watching two actors. It can feel like returning to a particular era, a particular version of themselves, and a particular cultural moment. That is the power of nostalgia. It can transform a photograph from an ordinary photograph into an emotional trigger. A reunion does not have to mean romance for audiences to feel something. Sometimes, seeing two familiar people together is enough to reopen an entire chapter. And that is where the story becomes more complicated. Because if Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson ever genuinely wanted to reconnect in a deeper way, they would not be returning to the world they occupied in 2015. They would be entering a completely different reality. They are older. Their careers have evolved. Their personal lives have evolved. Their priorities have evolved. And, perhaps most importantly, they understand the cost of public attention far better than they did at the beginning of their careers. Imagine being in their position. Every interaction could become a headline. Every dinner could become evidence. Every photograph could become a theory. Every silence could be interpreted as confirmation. That kind of pressure can make ordinary human connection extraordinarily difficult. And it raises a question that most viral stories never ask. What if the most meaningful thing about a possible reunion is not whether they are romantically involved at all, but whether two people who once shared an enormous amount of pressure can finally interact without the world deciding what their relationship must mean? That possibility is far more human. During the 50 Shades era, Jamie and Dakota were constantly asked to discuss their chemistry. They were expected to explain something that, from their perspective, was part of their profession. They had to repeatedly separate themselves from their fictional characters while simultaneously promoting a franchise that depended on audiences believing in those characters. That contradiction was unavoidable. They needed to sell the fantasy while reminding people that it was only acting. And that is why their public interactions were so easily misunderstood. A joke could be interpreted as flirtation. A compliment could become a headline. An awkward answer could be interpreted as tension. A comfortable friendship could be transformed into a romance theory. Years later, that same dynamic remains. The difference is that the stakes are now different. Neither actor needs the franchise in the same way. Neither has to prove anything about their chemistry. Neither needs to participate in a promotional campaign designed around their fictional relationship. So if they choose to spend time together today, the meaning would have to come from something other than the needs of a film studio. And perhaps that is exactly why fans find the possibility so fascinating. But there is another side too. This story. Hollywood thrives on the idea of second chances. The industry loves sequels. It loves comebacks. It loves redemption. It loves the former co-stars who suddenly reunite. But real life doesn't follow a screenplay. People don't necessarily return to the same relationships because audiences want them to. Sometimes people reconnect because they have grown. Sometimes they reconnect because enough time has passed. Sometimes they reconnect simply because they remained friends. And sometimes they don't reconnect at all. That is why responsible storytelling requires separating what is known from what is imagined. At the time of this story, viral claims about secret meetings, romantic reunions, private messages, hotel encounters, or dramatic declarations should not automatically be treated as confirmed facts simply because they appear in online posts or entertainment commentary. The absence of a denial does not equal confirmation. The absence of a confirmation does not prove a secret relationship. And a photograph cannot tell us what happened before or after the camera captured it. Yet the speculation itself tells us something important. It tells us that the audience still cares. It tells us that the 50 Shades era left a cultural imprint strong enough to survive years of distance. And it tells us that Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson remain linked in a way that neither career could completely erase. But perhaps the most fascinating possibility is not that they're repeating the past. It is that, if they are reconnecting in any meaningful way, they could be doing something completely different. Not Christian and Anastasia. Not the young stars of a controversial franchise. Not the pair constantly forced to answer questions about chemistry. Just Jamie and Dakota. Two adults who lived through an extraordinary period of fame and came out on the other side. That distinction changes everything. Because the greatest twist in a reunion story would not be discovering that two actors secretly fell in love. The greater twist would be discovering that they no longer need the old story at all. They could simply know one another. They could laugh about the chaos. They could remember the pressure. They could recognize how strange it was to become globally famous together. And they could walk away from it without giving the public the dramatic ending it desperately wants. That possibility may actually be more powerful than any romantic headline. Because sometimes the strongest relationships are the ones that survive without needing to be publicly defined. And if there really has been a renewed friendship or connection between Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, the world may never receive the neat Hollywood explanation it expects. There may be no dramatic announcement, no perfectly timed photograph, no emotional interview, no carefully written statement, just occasional moments, a conversation, a reunion at an industry event, a smile, a shared memory, and then silence again. But that silence would probably make the internet even louder. Because Hollywood has taught audiences to expect endings. And Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson have never quite given the public the ending it wanted. Their professional chapter ended. Their lives moved forward. But the fascination never disappeared. And perhaps that is why every new rumor feels like the beginning of another chapter. The question now is not simply whether they have reunited. The question is what a reunion would actually mean after everything that has changed. Because if the past taught them anything, it is that the moment the world thinks it understands their story, reality becomes much more complicated. And somewhere beneath all the headlines, photographs, and theories is a possibility far more intriguing than the rumor itself. Maybe the story was never really about Christian and Anastasia. Maybe it was always about Jamie and Dakota trying to become themselves after millions of people had spent years telling them who they were supposed to be. And if that is true, then the next chapter could look nothing like the one audiences are expecting. Because the biggest surprise may not be that these two names have appeared together again. The biggest surprise may be what happens when they refuse to let Hollywood write the ending for them. Part 2. The moment two famous people are linked by a successful film franchise, the public begins creating a second story around them. It is almost inevitable. The official story belongs to the studio, the characters belong to the screenplay, and the promotional narrative belongs to the publicity machine. But the imagined story belongs to the audience. Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson became perfect subjects for that phenomenon. Their characters had been designed to generate fascination. Their films were built around attraction, tension, secrecy, and emotional conflict. So when audience saw the actors together outside the fictional world, many naturally began looking for traces of the same dynamic. That is where the boundary between performance and reality became blurred. But there is something the audience often forgets. Actors know that the camera is watching. They know where they are standing. They know they are being photographed. They know that a simple interaction can become a headline. And after years of living inside that environment, celebrities often become extremely careful about what they reveal. That makes silence fascinating. Not because silence proves anything, but because silence leaves room for interpretation. And interpretation is the fuel that keeps celebrity culture alive. Suppose Jamie and Dakota attend the same event. Immediately, the internet asks whether it was planned. Suppose they speak privately. People ask what they discussed. Suppose they laugh. People call it chemistry. Suppose they barely acknowledge each other. People call it tension. There is almost no possible behavior that cannot be turned into a narrative. That is the trap. The public wants certainty from people who may have every reason to protect their privacy. And the more the public demands an explanation, the more valuable silence becomes. This is one reason celebrity reunion stories can grow so quickly. A headline does not need to prove a relationship. It only needs to create a question strong enough that people want to click. And the Jamie Dakota story contains an unusually powerful question. Could two people who became globally famous together ever genuinely return to one another's lives? Not as characters. Not as publicity partners. Not as a franchise. As themselves. That question is emotionally irresistible because it connects to something universal. Most people have experienced relationships that changed them. A childhood friend, a former colleague, someone they once loved, someone they lost contact with, someone they unexpectedly encountered years later. Time changes the meaning of those relationships. The person you knew at 20 may not be the person you meet at 30, and you may not be the same person either. That is what makes second chances so compelling. A second chance is not simply a continuation of the first chapter. It is an entirely new chapter written by people who have been changed by everything that happened in between. If Jamie and Dakota have genuinely become closer again in recent years, then any meaningful connection between them would exist in that context. They would have to navigate completely different circumstances, different careers, different responsibilities, different relationships, different public expectations, and the knowledge that millions of people would immediately interpret their every move. That final point cannot be underestimated. Imagine trying to have a normal conversation with someone from your past while knowing that a photograph of you standing beside them could generate thousands of headlines before you even reached your car. That is not normal life. That is celebrity life. And celebrity life changes the rules of relationships. Privacy becomes a luxury. Ordinary moments become potential evidence. Even friendship can become controversial. That is why the idea of a secret reunion is so seductive to audiences. It creates the illusion that two people manage to reclaim something private from an industry built around public exposure. But there is another possibility. Maybe there is no secret at all. Maybe the story is simply being amplified